very much for inviting me, Helga, and I'm very honored to be here in Germany to talk about the BRICS. As you know, that the BRICS, the name BRICS was coined by an American in 2002, and only in 2009, when the global crisis was almost midway, that the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. South Africa joined later, sorry. They got together. And today we have a new category of emerging countries that are not today, probably not, India is not so important as China or Russia, but they will be very important in the future. And the group's power is based on its potential rather than present commonalities or identities. Today, China, what is the importance of the BRICS? China is the biggest economy in PPP terms, that is the purchasing power parity. And India is the third largest economy. Between the BRICS, 26% of the world's landmass is covered, 18% of world trade, and 11 trillion, or some people have calculated it to be 16 trillion in GDP, and 46% of the world population. So you can imagine how important this combination, BRICS, is today, even today. So that's why I think the Western powers are a bit afraid of BRICS, and they keep talking about BRICS falling apart, but it won't fall apart. Now, what does the BRICS stand for? It stands to bring about a multipolar world. For a very long time, it has been a unipolar world where one set of countries are dominating the other set of countries. The developed countries are dominating the developing countries. And we've had a long time of this dominance. And so now it's time to change. And the BRICS want to establish their own bank. They want to change the World Bank, IMF. Change meaning bring about some marginal change. I don't think we can really abolish them, but WTO functioning, and it wants to cater to the needs of the developing countries. It seeks to cooperate with each other in various fields of development and security. Now what's happened? No, sorry. Maybe I, I don't know how it works, but anyway, since I come from India, I want to talk about why, what problems we've had in securing loans from the IMF, because India is a vast country. We've had since 1947, we won our independence, and we went through lots of turmoil, ups and downs. But in 1991, India was bankrupt. And where do we turn to? To the IMF. And so the IMF loan, the same goes with all the developing countries. It had conditionalities, what Helga was talking about, and we could not do our development the way we wanted. So there were reforms introduced, so-called reforms. Basically, it was to curtail the powers of the government to do what they wanted with the poor, or say subsidies, or the way the government wanted to spend. So it opened up the economy. The whole country was in turmoil. Many people benefited. There was a huge amount of FDI flow, and who benefited from this huge opening up of India? People with skills, people with money, people with connections, people with assets, not the poor. So actually, two Indias were created. Today, there is a huge amount of money in India, a big middle class. There are $10 billionaires. There are $150,000 millionaires. But there are about 300 million people who are living in real poverty. So two Indias have been created by these conditionalities, by these restrictions which the IMF imposed on us for going ahead with our development. Now, I think, reforms impact. I just told you that there's been a lot of corruption because of this opening up and because of there was no checks and balances. I mean, the reforms were not complete. So there is a lot of corruption. Even today, there was a lot of emphasis on export-led growth. Everything was export, export, export. And then in the name of export growth, we created export processing zones, which was nothing but land grab, People were just dispossessed of their land, and in the name of exports, these zones were created. Nothing much was happening there. Even today, nothing much is happening there. And mining sector was opened, which meant that we have a huge tribal population in the middle of India. If you look at the map, the middle is all tribal, and it is also very rich in minerals. So these mining companies, multinational companies, came and displaced the tribal population. And for centuries they were living there. So they had nothing else but to take to arms. And so today, 1/3 of India has armed struggle. It's called a Naxalite movement or Maoist movement. It is the biggest internal threat within India. Now, today we have a new prime minister. We had 40 years of the same government, more or less changing once sometimes some other party comes. Today we have a new prime minister, and his name is Narendra Modi, I think Helga mentioned, and he has set about a new agenda in which he's trying to, first of all, clean up India. Secondly, he wants to join up with the BRICS. He wants to have his own development bank along with the other BRIC countries. We don't want any more dominance of the unipolar world or the Western world or whatever you call it, developed world, who look down upon us and set agenda for us. So that is what he's doing. He's also opening up accounts for all the poor people. This is one of the reasons why India has not been able to give direct subsidies to the poor, because the poor don't have bank accounts. So he has started a campaign to open bank accounts for everybody so that we give subsidies directly to the farmers and not, through other means like fertilizer subsidy or fuel subsidy. And this is why Narendra Modi took a stand that he will oppose the Trade Facilitation Act of the WTO. He said, we need food security first. And so we will give subsidies the way we want. You cannot dictate to us. So I've actually written a lot on this. And I think he is right that, for a poor country, you have to have food security first, and then you talk about international, trade agreements. Now, he has also said that, okay, we don't want any more foreign direct investment in retail trade because we have a huge retail market. India has 500 billion retail trade, and 40 million people, small traders, are working in this retail trade. They're like, grocery shop, corner shops, and they'll all be displaced when Walmart comes or, Tesco comes. So Modi said no to this. So that's why he's trying to change the whole paradigm. And then Land Acquisition Act is also going to be enacted, which will give compensation to the poor, the tribal people whose land has been taken. They'll be retrained, they'll be given skills so that they cannot, just go and perish or take to arms, you know. So that's why a new Land Acquisition Act will be passed. And women, we've had, I'm sure you all have read negative things about women in India and the increase of rapes in India. It's all because of globalization. The young people without jobs have very high aspirations. When they see modern women, they do not like it. They're patriarchal in their mindset, and so they attack. So that is the reason why Modi has promised jobs for all, and he's going to bring back women in the labor force. Our labor force, the women's participation is declining, which is very, very sad, because women rather stay home and do their household and not take part in labor force. Now, I come back to the new development bank. Modi went to Brazil, and in Brazil, as you all know, there was this new development bank was set up, and that the headquarters will be in Shanghai, and the governor will be Indian, and the chairman of the board of governors will be a Russian, and the new regional bank will be in South Africa. Everybody is included. It's a democratic setup, equal voting right. Previously, BRIC countries had only 11%. All these huge countries had only 11% of the votes in IMF. And the IMF reform was promised, but it did not take place. It just, the US Senate refuses to pass the bill to reform the IMF's voting rights, and so then everybody, naturally, the BRICS are very unhappy. So it's a very democratic setup, and the contingent reserve facility of $100 billion has been set up, in which China will contribute 41 billion, Russia, India, Brazil, 18 billion, and South Africa, being a smaller country, 5 billion. Now, the idea is not to replace our World Bank, Asian Development Bank, or IMF. It will play a complementary role. In what way it will play? BRICS will have its own monetary policy for once. Otherwise, what is happening is that whenever America changes its monetary policy and monetary easing, then there is a havoc in the stock markets, and we have huge amount of FIIs, that is the foreign institutional investment flowing into India or China. And then, as soon as they announce something else, that, oh, we are going to stop the monetary easing, they all go back to America. So what happens to our currency? Suddenly the rupee falls, or suddenly the rupee increases. It plays havoc. So this contingency fund of 100 billion will take care of that. If any of our countries will be short of money, or because, you know, we have to put money from our pocket, the Reserve Bank of India has to finance, buy the rupees or buy the dollars to stabilize the currency. Now we can go there. And it will also stop the volatility, and it will also enhance the leverage in the global markets. You know, the NDB will have better leverage. Now, other countries can also join the BRICS. Most welcome. But BRICS share cannot fall below 55%. Now, what is the agenda of the BRICS? It will be bringing about cooperation in food security, urbanization, education, health, etc. Water, clean energy. Most important is that it will transform our infrastructure. BRICS infrastructure is not very good because, you know, not everybody is the same. And that is what they keep saying in the Western press mostly, that BRICS are not the same. Everything is different. Russia is the developed country, others are not. And so actually, we really need infrastructure more than anything else. And cooperation in in manufacturing, human development, IT, technology, etc. The whole idea is to have a strong global South. This is you can see Brazil has, this is in terms of electricity consumption, fixed broadband internet, rail lines, roads, quality of infrastructure. You can see that there is a lot of difference. India is the least developed. And in this, you can see Germany, how far you are ahead of us. So, you know, we need infrastructure in every way we can. And so this BRICS Bank will give money for infrastructure without strings, without conditionality, which is wonderful, because we want to construct rural roads, we want to construct connectivity with other countries, and otherwise the World Bank would say, no, no, this is not on, you do it like this, and then they will send their team to monitor our projects. We don't want that. We want to increase our own capacity to monitor our own projects. Now, cooperation among BRICS is also in terrorism, cybersecurity, climate change, global policy issues like no threat of force, use of threat of force, and G20 to be the most important institution because we are all members of G20, and cooperation in preserving biodiversity. This BRICS region is absolutely rich in biodiversity. In India, we have species which are going extinct almost because of this mindless, you know, monoculture, in agriculture, mindless monoculture, mindless, you know, industrialization. Similarly, China has a lot of biodiversity. Brazil, of course, is absolutely the most important. So for promoting sustainable development, we need to cooperate with each other. We've already had meetings, and especially in human development, we had the first meeting in New Delhi in 2011. I was a member of the academic forum, and we talked about health a lot because, you know, all the developed countries, the age, the longevity is 80 years. For us, it's 68 years. And education, we have only 8 years average. In developed countries, it's 13 years. And we also have a lot of inequality of income, whereas as you measure it with Gini coefficient, it's our 0.49, and for the developed countries, it's, I think, maybe 20 or 19 or something. It's in my paper, maybe you can look at it. Now, these are the sort of concluding points, but there's a lot of thinking to be done that how we can come together with so diverse a combination and so far apart in 4 continents. Brazil, India, when we talk to Brazil, hardly any of us have been to Brazil. It's so far away. Or South Africa, I'd love to go, but I can't, it's too far. So how to have the connection and how to have, but when we meet, we see everything in common. Whenever we meet in different fora, there's a lot in common. And it is to establish ourselves as the alternative to the unipolar world and to have a multipolar world in which China, India, Brazil, and Russia and South Africa will be dominant. They will be very important. As Narendra Modi said, that, you know, it is not today, it's the future. We'll be very important. We will have our own currency, most probably. I don't know which one will be the first to come, maybe Chinese one, because already ASEAN and even some parts of India, Nepal definitely, they accept yuan, Chinese yuan, and we do trade in China with Chinese money. And the important force in the future is a large pool of resources. India has a huge amount of manpower, is one of the 1.2 billion people. China has 1.3 billion people. We have huge resources. We have huge young population. In India, 65% of the population is below 35. And we need, of course, jobs, but, it's a very young population. In Europe, I find it's an aging population. Everybody is getting, and China also is facing somewhat, but much later, they'll have a problem with the labor force. But India will be supplying labor to everybody in the world. And their voice will be heard in the working of all international institutions, including the Security Council, UN, WTO, because they'll be a very important force in the future. And they will be a very important labor force. And actually, this BRICS whole idea is to make South once again strong. As Helga said, that it used to be, so many movements took place, but, they all petered out or they faded away. But today, again, we have a movement because South-South trade is extremely important. It is a $2.2 trillion trade, much more than North-South trade. So this is the future of the world, I think, and BRICS is going to live and not fall. Thank you.